I know what you're thinking. What in the gosh darn is Bits and Bombs? Bits and Bombs is a podcast deep diving into what it takes to do stand-up from a different comedian every episode. Follow new open micer Peter Doms in his journey to be an okay comic.
I'm very lucky to be with Nicole just over 10 years. And honestly, we love each other more today than when we first met. I'm also very lucky to be with her because she is a doctor and I am a semi-professional comedian. I'm so lucky to be in this relationship. But the difference in our incomes, it really does create like this power dynamic because she makes doctor money and I steal my groceries. And that power dynamic is why I'm the one in the relationship who eats ass. You know? It's out of respect. When one of you makes way more money, you have to kiss the ring. I don't make the rule. I do enjoy it. I like my wife. Because the sex does change in long-term relationships, right? Like, so we do try to mix it up. Like, we do a bit of role play. Like, occasionally, like, I'll pretend to, like, have a real job. She pretends to come. It's pretty cool. We also did recently start experimenting with choking. Where she will hold me down and then grab me by the throat and then just start screaming, "Pay your half of the fucking rent, cunt!" It's not sexual. It's just happening.
Alright, so Jez Watts.
Hello.
Hello. How are you today?
Yeah, pretty good actually.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day in Brisbane.
Yeah, it's a good day walking through. I saw you've been taking photos of walking through to...
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just so strange that, you live right around the corner from a place. It's paternity and immigration DNA testing. And people say Australia's not racist. Oh, my God. What's immigration DNA testing, man? Nah, you're too brown for us, cunt. Like, what's that? Do you know?
That was the first time me noticed, like, seeing that when you posted it.
Yeah. Well,
I guess you just.
I'm from Melbourne, so I'm pretty woke.
Yeah, typical Melbourne comedian.
Yeah, exactly.
So, start a petition or something for it.
Yeah. There's a GoFundMe.
Yeah. So when was your first gig?
Oh, it's just over 10 years ago now. Like, I started in Perth. I wanted to do comedy forever, and then I started really late. Like, I started at 29. Which I'm very sad about, because we were just in Adelaide with James McCann, and he's so funny. He's one of the funniest people in the country, and I've known him for ages. And when we're at dinner, he just mentioned offhand that he was 32, and I just turned 40, and I was like, "Fuck, he's so much funnier than me at 32." And I messaged him literally today to be like, "Hey, you mentioned you were 32. Are you lying about your age, or did you start comedy just really, really young? Because I reckon you're 15 years in." And he went, "Oh yeah, I started when I was 17." I was like, "Fuck, I wish I'd done that."
Oh shit, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't believe in myself enough to do. I didn't think I was allowed to do comedy until I was doing a year exchange when I was at uni to the States, and then I was in New York for 3 months because I didn't want to go to classes in North Carolina. And I'd met a girl whose couch I could stay on. And so I met an open micer in Brooklyn. And then it was when I was 28 or whatever. And I went, "Oh, fuck, you could start and be bad." And I didn't know that until then. And then I immediately was like, "Oh, I've got to do comedy." And so I would go to the Comedy Cellar every night and watch Todd Barry and Gary Goldman and those caliber of comedians. And just be taking mental notes and stuff. And then when I came back to Perth after the exchange year, I did my first gig at a uni bar gig there, and it went well, even though it was terrible. I think back at the things I said, and they were not good at all. But I think a bunch of people were there to support me or whatever, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm good at this," and I wasn't, but I thought I was. And then so then I gigged in Perth and stuff from there.
Yeah, cool. So whenabouts how old were you when you think you started getting interested in comedy? Like you said that you kind of push yourself.
Oh, I remember when
from doing it.
I saw Eddie Murphy Raw and Delirious and stuff when I was still in high school. But I think it was late in high school, so probably 16, 17. Yep. And I loved it, but it didn't seem to be something that a person in Australia, let alone Perth, which is the most isolated city in the world, could have done. So I never sort of considered, my friends and I would memorize the Eddie Murphy bits, and we shouldn't have been dropping those hard N-bombs, but we were, and because we're in Perth, and all the white South Africans agreed that you should say that word. But we loved that, and we would memorize it, and Then I got into really into Bill Hicks and stuff, download everything that I could find of him. And I was a big comedy fan, but I never considered I could do it. When I first went to uni, out of high school, which I eventually dropped out of, but I was studying English and stuff. I wanted to be a writer. And then when I left uni and stuff, then I traveled the world for 5 years and stuff. And then I went back to uni. I still didn't, I was at that point, I was 24. It was after I got married for the first time, which I've only been married once, but I'm going to be married a second time. That's why I say it that way. Second marriages are forever. I've been telling my fiance. And then I went back to uni the second time, and then I was doing science and stuff, and I still didn't even consider comedy as an option, even though I loved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I met an open micer, and I was like, oh fuck, I could do it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I think it's funny how once you see the open mic stuff, and you kind of get
to see people you could be funnier than.
Yeah, exactly. You see the seams kind of.
Yeah. Because I didn't even do science. I genuinely love science and research science, and I went to a relatively high level in that. I was doing a doctorate in neuroscience when I started comedy. And I love research science, but it was the same thing. I didn't think I was allowed to do it. I was going to go back to uni and be a teacher because I was like, that's something anyone could do. And then my then wife, my now ex-wife, I don't want to say this to be insulting. She's not the smartest person in the world. We both went back to uni at the same time, and she started studying molecular biology. She enrolled for it, and I went, oh fuck, if you're allowed to do it, I can definitely do it. And so then I enrolled in science as well. I think it's that thing that you think it's just the best people in the world do it because those are the people you're exposed to.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like there's a mid-tier or a low tier that even exists until you meet someone from it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that when I lived at a uni campus for a while, and there's all these people engineering and
sure,
medical degrees. I'm like, what the fuck? How'd you get into that? So.
I definitely feel there were a lot of dumb fuck scientists that were working in science. Loads of people are smart in science as well. But yeah, it's so interesting that I think you forget that there are bad examples of every profession. There are stupid doctors.
Yeah.
Who are bad at doctoring.
Yeah. Which is probably one of the scarier professions.
For sure. But it definitely happens. There's shitty lawyers. There's shitty, there's a lot of shitty comedians.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cool. So you went back to Perth after doing a few gigs in America.
Oh, no. So I didn't gig. I planned to do comedy.
Oh, okay.
When I was there. I wrote down a list of this is so stupid. I wrote down because I listened to a lot of podcasts and I was a comedy fan, and so I thought I could jump all the steps, which I think loads of people do think that now. They go, oh, I've had the inside track. Oh no, you still have to go through the steps of learning how to be a comedian. But before I ever got on stage, I wrote down essentially just a list, a bullet point list of all the stories I had used to get laid. Because I'm a little dude and I'm a beta male and stuff, so I'm not a big tough alpha who's been able to attract women through masculinity. So the way I would always get laid, so I used to be heavy into the drug scene and bush stuffs and partying and all this kind of stuff, and I traveled the world a lot, and I was very promiscuous. And the way I would get laid is I would just be entertaining enough that at some point their panties were off and we were having sex, and they were like, oh, I've just been having such a good time, and it turns out we can just be banging now. It sounds really gross the way I just said it. Anyway, but it's true. It is how I live. And so, I essentially wrote a list of all my funny stories, because none of them was either winner. I was low status even before I did comedy. And then I went, great, I've got an hour. I thought, and then you get on stage and you're like, oh, this is not stand up. You know, plenty of those little kernels of plenty of those stories have bled through into my stand up, but you think the way you tell a story off stage before you do stand-up, I think, you assume you could just do the same thing on stage, and you're like, oh, this is a whole different rhythm, and it's a different level of rigor that you need to have. Yeah. Where you go, oh, this works as a funny thing when we're at the pub or whatever, but then on stage under lights with a microphone, it's just, totally different. But, so I started back in Perth, actually.
Yeah, okay, cool. And so what was your first gig in Perth?
So it was a gig at the bar on campus at my university at the time, and it was just a sort of a one-off show that got put on, and So like there was some local Perth comedians on, and I think it was something where because I was enrolled at the uni, there was something of like, oh, any students who are at the uni can also sign up, and so it was me and like maybe 3 or 4 like Perth comics that I then got to know and stuff. But like at the time, there was only one open mic in Perth, like a weekly show, and you get on maybe once a month or two, and then there was another gig that ran. I think it ran weekly, but they only had like one like open mic slot on it. So you'd have to wait like 3 months to get a gig. So not many spots that first year, you know, maybe 12, 15 or something. That was the max I could get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back then there wasn't much of an open mic or any open mic scene in Perth.
No, not really. I mean, there were open mics, but it was just like very little stage time.
Yeah.
And so that was something that, like, so I very early started a room, like a weekly room, which is more of an open mic. Well, it was an open mic. And then a friend of mine also started a room around the same time. And now, like, the Perth scene, it's still small, but it's, like, incredibly vibrant compared to how it used to be, for sure, you know? But it's a thing where when I started, there was so little stage time, and at the time, like, very few acts would come from interstate even, let alone internationally. And so it was a very hard place to try and get good. And plus the Perth audiences are so great that makes you bad. They laugh at everything.
Oh, yeah.
You get applause breaks for premises there, man. It's sick.
Oh, really?
It's so good. But it makes you bad. Yeah. Because like if you don't have to work for it, like you don't get better.
Yeah.
And so this was a thing. It's probably less true now, but like when I started or when I was like early on, like it was a very regular occurrence that like people would start in Perth, they do comedy for a year or two. You start getting paid really early there as well because there's few comics.
Yeah.
And then you think you're a pro like a year in.
Yeah.
And a year in Perth is like 3 weeks in Melbourne or something. And then you go interstate for the first time. And then this would happen to every Perth comic. They would just completely bomb their week in a harder city where the audience was a bit more discerning and like you're on lineups with better comedians than you. And then you completely bomb that week. And then you either move to Melbourne or Sydney or you go back to Perth and never leave. Because you can go back and keep doing well and get paid, and it's very beguiling, I think. It depends what your goal is in comedy.
Yeah.
Because like some people, I think, get into comedy to be famous and important, which I think is weird because it's the least useful profession anyone could be in. I mean, I used to be a fucking neuroscientist. Like, comedy doesn't mean shit. I was working on like my doctoral thesis was trying to work on regenerating the central nervous system of fixed spinal cord injury. And in that context, and my partner's a veterinarian, like she's a doctor of veterinary medicine, and like Sam Talent, who I've been touring with, his wife's a doctor. In that context, how is comedy important? So why do comedy to be important? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my goal has always just been to try to be as funny as I can. I just love comedy and stuff. So I was like, as soon as I saw, you know, how much better people were in bigger scenes, I was like, well, I've got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. How long were you in Perth for doing comedy? Too long.
Well, that's the thing, right? So I've been with my partner Nicole for just over 10 years. We did. We started dating, I think, the week I did my first gig, and I told her at the time, I said, "Hey, I'm going to do comedy forever," and I don't think she believed it. Like I was like doing a doctorate, and she's like, "Okay, sure, you're going to do comedy forever. I think you're probably going to be a doctor of neuroscience." And then now we're engaged, and I'm doing this, and probably she feels hard done by. But yeah. So what it was because we graduated around the same time. And then she got this great career opportunity. We were supposed to move out of Perth like really soon after the graduation and go to a bigger scene, which is Melbourne or Sydney, or we're seriously talking about the States. Yeah. And then Trump got elected and she said it's going to be crazy. And I said, baby, no, how much power does the president have? And she was totally right. It's like a failed state over there now. Yeah, so in the end, like we stayed in Perth like way longer, like probably maybe 4 years or something after I started because she kept getting these career opportunities. And it was this thing where we had this very strange sort of devil's bargain thing where we talked because we loved each other very much, but for both of us it was like the best romantic relationship we had been in, and we sort of had this idea that we'd be together forever. At that time we hadn't talked about marriage in a serious sense, but we definitely had talked about we really love each other and want to be together forever. And so we talked about like, okay, should I go to Melbourne now and then we'll do long distance? and then we'll probably grow apart and break up. Or if I stay, or if she come with me to Melbourne and like turn down this great career opportunity, she'll resent me for it, and then we'll grow apart and break up. Or if I stay in Perth, I'll resent her because my comedy career will be suffering, and then we'll grow apart and we'll break up. And so in the end, what we did, her income was going like way up. Her income was going up 20 grand to get this career opportunity, and so in order for us to stay together, she allocated 10 grand of her extra income to me to do the festival circuit. So I could still be in Perth, but then grow by like traveling for like 5 months of the year and doing a bunch of festivals.
Yeah.
And then all of her friends were like, don't give this cunt 10 grand. What are you doing? Which is actually fair advice. And is very, and especially because that year I lost 16 grand doing festivals and of her money. Yeah. And they were like, and then I was away for like half the year. And like, she had a couple of good friends like really be like, you need to leave this dropkick. I will say like the year after that, I did all the same festivals, and not only did I not lose 16 grand, I broke even. So I did 16 grand better. Yeah. And the year after that, I started paying off like the money I'd borrowed from her, and like now and even a few years ago, like I had paid off the full 16 grand. So she like gave me that money to like underwrite, which I think a lot of people get a boost from family or whatever, but like I didn't have any family money, and so she's been paid back everything now, and we live fairly inequitably, and it's all good. But like if I just stayed in Perth and not done the festivals, like I think I would, especially because I started late as well. It's like it lights a fire under you, I think. If I'd moved earlier, I think I would be better. And if I hadn't been in this committed relationship for my entirety of comedy, I'd probably be more technically developed, because you spend a lot of effort and time on a relationship that I don't regret, but I might be I think my comedy might be less rich. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I have this important relationship. Long-term relationships in terms of professional comedians are pretty rare, because it's a lot of pressure on a relationship to be away all the time and have inconsistent income and all that shit. And so much of my comedy is about our relationship and how important it is to me, or how much of my life it is. And it's like, I think that's a good thing for a comedian, to have important other relationships in their life and not have their whole life be about comedy. Yeah. But I do think it makes you develop more slowly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Definitely. Okay. Yeah.
How fucking boring am I being? All right, so
probably
real boring.
Probably like keeps you on. I think a lot of comedians and stuff, when they don't have that important relationship, like, are probably easier to burn out too.
Sure, and I think it's like I think we were talking a bit before we recorded, but like I think when you don't have, I don't think if your whole life is outside of comedy and then you just show up and do gigs, I don't think that's good for you either. Yeah. But yeah, when all you have is comedy, I do think it can sometimes make you a little bit crazy. Yeah. And it can make you attribute a little too much importance to some of the crazy relationships in comedy that happen sometimes. Yeah. Where it becomes everything to you. And it's like, I do think, it grounds me a little to have a really important relationship outside of comedy. I mean, she's still a comedy fan. We talk about comedy and like she could be a very exceptional comedian. She's funnier than me for sure. I mean, I'm now better at delivering jokes, but she's more inherently funny than me. I'm not a funny bones person, and as much as I say like, oh, I used to be, entertaining the girls to get laid or whatever, but I would work hard at it. Yeah, and that's how I am in comedy too. I'm a work ethic comedian. There are people with funny bones. There are people with strong work ethic. There are rare people that have both. Yeah. And I always think work ethic, at least this is what I've seen, and I believe it to be true, is that work ethic beats out funny bones in terms of you're developing as an actual professional comedian. But if you have both, then you have the world. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of my closest friends is a comedian named He Huang, who's blown up this last couple of years. Yeah. She's originated from China, and like she's lived here and stuff, and she's moved to the States soon. And she's got both. Like her work ethic is way stronger than mine, and I don't consider myself lazy. But she's also just so fucking inherently funny.
Yeah, she was here earlier in the year and did like her show maybe 4 or 5
Yeah, well, she
times.
kept selling out
Yeah.
the venues.
Yeah, she did. She went through like different venues and different like promoters and stuff for the one show.
Absolutely, yeah. She did some stuff through Guilt Free and through Good Chat. I don't think she did Sit Down, but and then this other like independent promoter I'd reached out and stuff. But I mean, she had like this incredibly lucky break, and then she was so hardworking and talented, so she's able to parlay that into this incredible jump in her career.
Yeah.
Like I met her because she started in Washington DC in the States when she was doing her masters over there in Georgetown, and she started like just doing open mics and gigging and stuff. I think she was there for maybe a year or something, and then after all that, then she maybe went back to China for a bit, and then she moved to Melbourne, and she was still she was working and stuff, but she was there to do comedy.
Yeah.
And at that point, she was still a lot more raw than she is now, because I think she's only like 7 years in now. But she's definitely had more stage time than me at 10 years, because she worked so hard and she's had so many opportunities. But I remember seeing her when she was still pretty new and just being like, what a great joke writer and how funny. And we became friends. And then during the Melbourne lockdowns, which we all went crazy, we did some Zoom comedy shows together, which they're the worst things in the world. And I remember saying, because we had sort of worked ours out pretty well, where it was actually pretty fun, as much as they can be. Like we'd work out some of the technical aspects or whatever, and like we did like a Zoom storyteller comedy show. And I remember saying right as the lockdowns were ending, like, I reckon I'll just keep doing these on the side. I'll probably do these forever. I could always do these. And then like a week out, I was like, I'll never do that again. Why would I do that when you can have live people in front of you? But yeah, so we became much closer during the lockdowns, especially after I like lost my mind and went to therapy. And then he was like, you need to talk to human beings. And so I started reaching out to the people I was more friendly with in Melbourne, and then like sort of help get each other through lockdown. And then coming out of lockdown, then we co-hosted like a monthly show together and started working together a lot more, just as contemporaries or whatever. And like, she became like, one of my best friends, and I'm so happy for all her success. It's so deserved. And it's just going to be this thing where at some point, I'm like, I've said that, like me and there's another good friend of mine, Glenn Grimwood, who's originally from Perth. We started together and he moved to Melbourne recently, and he's also now friends with her. And we've said to each other multiple times, that it's like such a good thing that we became such close friends with her before she got fame. Because now all the people have come out of the woodwork being like, oh, I've always been a fan of you. People who are like dicks to her, like, oh yeah, I've always loved your comedy. Because now she's like somebody. And then there's all these like fame whores who are just like, oh, I just want it, like a remora fish or whatever, just trying to fucking just suck up the fame. And it's just like, oh, thank God we have a genuine friendship that she knows is genuine, because she's going to be a fucking superstar. Yeah, absolutely. And she will at least know that there was no ulterior motive, because she had nothing to give us when we became friends. But cool. I'm sorry, I forget how we got into that.
So you've done quite a few festivals.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your first festival show was? That a solo show?
Yeah, I think I did. Because I started with like Perth. So like the ones that were sort of in my regular rotation pre-COVID, like I would do Perth Fringe, Adelaide Fringe, Melbourne Comedy Festival, then Perth Comedy Festival, Sydney Comedy Festival sort of happened at the same time. I would do them both. And then I would do Edinburgh, like most years. Yeah. But yeah, so I started in Perth, so I did Perth Fringe. I think I did like a sort of a split-ish show, maybe a showcase or something the first year. And then the year after that, I did like a solo show where I had an opener do 10 minutes, and I think I made it to 33. Like that's everything I possibly had. And it was not good. There are a couple of bits, like there's like I think one joke and one bit that I still have, but they've changed like a lot since then. Like essentially the premise of them is there still, but like, the actual execution would have been terrible. But yeah, no, that first show was dog shit. I sold it out, but yeah, I had a bunch of, because I was still doing my doctorate at the time, I had like a bunch of people from my lab come, and they were nice afterwards, but in retrospect, I'm very embarrassed, because that's like like one of them's continued to come back and see me like multiple years and stuff, but most of them, that's the only time they ever saw me perform, and they're just going to have that in their head.
mind. That's
what Jez does.
Yeah.
Terrible, dog shit, offensive comedy. That honestly, it did go reasonably well. I mean, it would be interesting to like go back and maybe look at footage of it. Like I certainly remember it going well, but it probably wasn't that good. Definitely, there was I had a point in the show where I went out the back behind the curtain to bring on a guest comedian, and then I changed my outfit.
Yeah.
And I put on a jacket, and I came back in character as Dodney Rangerfield, the topical, non-topical comedian. And the premise of him was, I think he'd been alive for like 2,000 years, but he was a very slow joke writer, and he did topical comedy. But so I would be doing like topical comedy about things deep. It's so stupid.
So it'd be like, oh, you hear about the Titanic? Or,
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think the best one, which actually, I don't know if you know Andrew Portelli, he gave me this, because I told him the premise, and he gave me a joke for it, and I went, that's pretty good. And he went, yeah, he looked sad because he gave me a good joke that he couldn't have now.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, it's not that great. But I won't do the voice. But
it's one of those ones.
yeah, I was like, doing Rodney Dangerfield kind of like delivery. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
But the joke was, you hear about this black plague. Everyone's talking about this black plague. I don't know about you, but I think it's a plague of color. Which, all right, that's about what it deserves. But it was the best one of the series of jokes I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, thinking back to it, it's pretty embarrassing. But I mean, you have to start somewhere, and that was the longest I'd done on stage, and it definitely grew me a lot as a comedian. And then the year after that, I think I did Edinburgh maybe the year after that. So I think maybe Perth Fringe the year after, like I probably still had an opener, did 40 or something. And then I went to the Edinburgh Fringe. I did the Free Fringe that year. And there it's much more sort of, particularly the Free Fringe, it's much more like sort of fly by night. There's no tech, there's no door person. You just sort of do everything unless you want to pay for someone to come and do it. And so I just did everything myself, where like I was the person, like dealing with the line. And then I was the person doing the tech. If any tech needed to be done. And then I was also performing. And I sort of got addicted to that way of doing it. Like, I actually really liked that. I liked the sense that the show starts before the show starts. Like, I think that's true whether or not you're doing it. Like, if someone comes in and the door person's a dick to them, then that's part of the show for that person. That's made their show worse.
Yeah.
Or if it's confusing how to get in and they're getting frustrated, or they can't get a drink. Or even just seeing the artwork before you decide to go to the show. It's all part of the show, I think. And it's part of that person's experience of what that show is.
It's setting like an expectation.
It is. All of it is. And it's like, if that stuff is bad and they still come and see the show, or if something happens at the venue and it's bad, or if there's a bad smell in the venue or whatever, it's all part of the show. And so the Free Fringe is where I had hands on more pieces of it. And I went, oh, that's interesting, actually, where I sort of learned, because you're doing the same show like every day for like 25 days or whatever. And then also the Free Fringe is like a bucket system, right, where people are paying by donation at the end, and you really do see the difference in donations. Like, you have this very clear metric of how much people enjoyed the show, in a way that sometimes people are quiet laughers or smilers or whatever, and you go, oh, I bombed or whatever, but then they might give you a lot of money, and you go, oh, well, I guess the show actually went well because these people valued it more, and maybe they're just, this particular audience is not as demonstrative as I liked or whatever. And then other times people can laugh a lot and not give you very much money, and you go, actually, I think that wasn't as good a show as I thought it was.
Yeah. It's funny how that can display your worth in like a monetary, it's very direct.
It's really interesting. And it's something that, before I did the Free Fringe over there, I had the idea that, free shows or donation shows are inherently worse. I do think to some extent they are, but there are also these cool benefits to it where you get to go, oh, actually, that's how good the show was.
Yeah. I
got 200 quid in the bucket today. My first year there, I was in like a 20-seater. And if I get 200 quid in the bucket versus 100 pounds in the bucket, it's like that show, I think, it's a really accurate reflection of how much better the show is. And it also taught me how to do a great bucket speech where, like, I don't know if you know that concept, but that's like, It's a very Edinburgh Fringe thing. But the donations, it's like, you got to tell them that they got to donate, right, at some point.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that, I've found, at least, or it's been explained to me, and when I executed on it well, it really improved things, is like you do it right before your big closer. So you do whatever, 45 minutes or whatever it is, then you do your bucket speech, then you do 5 of your best stuff after they have the concept in their head of, I should pay for the value of this.
Yeah.
Then you really show them the value because you give them your best stuff at the end. And what I found was that when I got a really good bucket speech, it increased my donations like probably 40%. And that's all fucking money to take home because you don't pay anything to the venue. You're not paying taxes on it. It's just fucking money that you get in a bucket or on a square meter or whatever. But it's like, that's just yours. And so it's really interesting the way the Fringe is structured over there. There's like the ticketed festival, which is like the prestigious one, where you can, like, I remember, like, I think it was the year before I went there, Ari Shaffir went there, and I was listening to the podcast where he was talking about it, and he sold out his whole run, and he lost $10,000.
Jesus.
Because the overheads of that ticketed Fringe are nuts.
Yeah.
And like it's just venue rental, and they require you to spend a certain amount of money on advertising and all this kind of shit.
It needs to be like a registration to be a part of it as well.
Well, the registration is like, it's not that much, it's like £300 or something, but like that's to get in the guide and on the website and stuff. That's fine. But then the overheads of the ticketed Fringe are like, it's absurd. And like the idea of selling out your run and you lose 10 grand doesn't make any sense. You know, it's like, you can understand if like, ticketing, there's literally no way to make money on the ticketed Fringe. It's set up so you won't make money. It's set up that way because people do the ticketed Fringe to get industry attention and build their career. I don't have a career and I won't have one. Nobody's interested in me. I'm just another fucking straight white guy who's dirty. That's fine. I'm just here to do comedy, and I love it. And as long as like what I always said is like, if I pay my rent over, that's enough. Now that I'm 40 and my fiance is like, hey, we need to buy property and shit. Like, okay, I do need to make some money. But I used to just be like, oh no, I pay my rent's fine. The free Fringe is like actually the only way to make money over there. And plenty of people who do the ticketed Fringe we'll do 2 1-hour shows a day. They'll do one in the ticketed Fringe. They'll do one in the free Fringe. They do the free Fringe show in order to pay the overheads of the ticketed Fringe.
Fucking hell.
What a fucking weird system that is. But that's the system. It's so strange. It's so weird. Yeah, comedy doesn't make any sense to outsiders at all. And nor should it, because it's dumb.
Sometimes it feels at the end of the day, it's just like, we're all doing this just because we love being on stage and stuff.
Well, that's why so many people quit. It's like, if you don't have a pure love, not pure love, but if you don't have a love of it, you wouldn't be able to tolerate all the dumb shit.
And not getting that immediate return.
I mean, there's a lot of immediate detriment, you know? There's a lot of immediate negatives to doing comedy. No, absolutely. But I mean that's I wouldn't even call it a failure rate, but the rate of people quitting, it's probably 98%, you know, of people who start don't ultimately keep doing it. And sometimes people can get to, 6 years in or 7 years in or 10 years in and then go, you know what, there's no point. And it is that thing of like, oh no, there isn't a point, really, unless you're the lucky few or, like we said earlier with like He Huang, like she got some great lucky breaks and then was able to work hard and be talented and parlay them into other things. She's now got a great career. For her, it makes sense. But even because like we're so close that we talk about things all the time, but even for her, like plenty of times she's like, no, I don't really know if I should keep doing it because she's on the road all the time and like, it's hard to, like she's making a fuck ton of, especially compared to me, she's making a fuck ton of money, like so much money. And she's like, I don't know if it's worth it. I'm like, it is. It's so worth it. But it's like, I mean, you have to make that decision yourself. Everyone I know who's quit, whenever I run into them like a year or two later, their life is better. Every time. I feel like they died. I'm like, what a sad thing. And then they've got a house and a wife and kids and they're having a great time. And I'm like, this is all right, cool. I can't do that. I can't quit comedy. But that's because I desperately need it. It's not because it makes sense.
So you said that your first festival show, like your first festival run, you lost money on, and then
for sure. Well, that first year that I like toured around, Yeah, because all the overheads of like travel, accommodation, registration, marketing.
Yeah.
What I found to be true, and there's been because I've like was really like especially pre-COVID, I was really a festival comic. I would make all my money from festivals, and like live off that from the year and stuff. And like, unlike a lot of people who do festivals, like I would turn a profit, partly due to my autism and love of spreadsheets. But I've helped a lot of people, talked to a lot of people through how to like execute in a like well financially in terms of a festival, as opposed to just get creative development or whatever and pay money to do so. But yeah, I think I've done, I mean, at this point, probably 36 or 37 festivals.
Wow. Holy fuck.
And I mean, I love them. I love doing hours. And if I lived in the States, which we were planning to move to, like I would just be going and doing the road and then, you know, be doing clubs or whatever and doing feature spots and working up to headline spots. That's the thing that we don't have in Australia. We have the festival system. If you want to do hours, if you want to do longer time, you sort of need to be self-producing stuff in the festivals and use that to do it. But yeah, so what was the question? The first festival was that. Oh yeah, the first year I lost 16 grand to do all those ones I mentioned, right? So Edinburgh Fringe, I lost the most money.
Oh, so was that in the first?
That was the first time I went and did a whole run.
Oh, okay, because that was my question. Was how did you get funding for the?
So my first festival show was Perth Fringe, and like I think I even maybe. I don't know if I turned a profit, but I said I like broke even or whatever on that first like hour or 33 minutes. I would have broke even because I sold out and it was low ticket prices, but it wasn't like much overheads because I lived there. And then that first year that I toured around probably would have been the year after that, and that's when Nicole, my fiance, like, thank God, helped me to. Lose 16 grand and then not have to pay it back immediately. It was a very hard sell to her because I lost 16 grand that year. And then everyone I'd spoken to, there's a Sydney comedian, Sam Kisajuki, and he really very generously like told me how everything worked at festival, how he did things. And he had done, he was someone I knew who had gone to Edinburgh and turned a profit from Australia, which is rare.
Yeah.
And I went, how did you do it? And he told me everything he did. And I just did everything he did. And then it worked. And then the next person who came along, I told them all the stuff I did that I learned from him. And then like just that idea of like, you know, I don't like the idea of competition in comedy. I think we're all in it together. And I think trying to be competitive with other comedians, I think doesn't make you better. I think it makes you worse.
Yeah.
And I think it makes the scene worse. So I've always tried to help people with knowledge I've accrued. It was that thing of that second year I was going to tour everywhere. And Nicole was like, so you lost 16 grand and you're going to do them all again. And I went, baby, no. I've been informed that the second time I go and do the festivals, it'll all be better. And she went, I don't think it's true. And I was like, I understand why you don't think it's true. Please let me do it. And it was actually legitimately the hardest time in our relationship, and probably the closest we ever came to breaking up, was when I was away for 6 months of the year and owed her 16 grand. That's fucked. And fucking hats off to her for like getting through it, because now we're good. But that second year, every festival I went to the second time, like either turned a profit or broke even or like did so much better. And it's that thing of, you do need to build up your presence in a city. You need the people who come and see you, if they enjoy you, will come back and see you if you've got a new show. And then they'll tell people, and then bookers will know you, and then you'll get more paid gigs, and then you'll work out, oh, actually I should stay in this accommodation because it's cheaper, or like this is the right way to do marketing there, or whatever. Like, you'll spend less money more effectively because you'll know how it works, and then you'll get more paid stuff, and you can have ticket prices higher, you're a year better as well, you know? It's that thing of, a lot of comics I've talked to, like Ben Darcy, I don't know if you know, like tours around a lot. That's one thing that he told me early on, was that his first year, not even really doing the festivals, but just touring around Australia, like he lost 10 grand. And then the year after that, like he made money. And it's like, you sort of need a loss leader to develop, to get to a point where you can turn a profit or be good enough to turn a profit.
Yeah, okay. Because my mindset, for some reason, I misheard it and thought you said that the second year is when you did Edinburgh. So I was like, how'd you get the funding to be like, let's go overseas? But
Well, I mean, that was, I probably did my first show was probably 2 or 3 years in Perth. And then the year after that, I think, so it would have been like year 4 in comedy, I guess.
Yeah.
I would have done like all those festivals.
Yep, cool.
And that would have been Edinburgh the first year, yeah. And I very stupidly, I paid Steve Bennett from Chortle $500 to come and review me. It was the meanest review. He said I should quit comedy. He said I shouldn't be there. And I paid him $500 to just destroy me emotionally.
Holy fuck.
It was brutal. Whew. I'll tell you what, though, it did make me a much better comedian. He said a lot of very mean things that were very accurate.
Yeah, I think
he didn't need to say them as meanly as he did,
Yeah.
but he did because it amuses him. But all the insights were correct. And I looked at that review very seriously, and I really worked on every point he brought up, and it made me such a better comedian.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way the 500 was well spent, but fuck, it didn't feel like it.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to get this great chortle quote, and I'm
Yeah.
like use that to sell poker.
Yeah,
It's like,
like
the quote is like, "This cunt sucks," you know. Like,
Yeah. So from there, is the goal to have like a new show ready every year for every festival? Or?
yeah, I was doing that. Like, I think I've done 7 or 8 different hours now. That I've
shit.
toured around. I was doing that at one point. And then when COVID happened and everything shut down, like, I know, like, in most other places, like, we all had COVID, right? But in Melbourne, the actual lockdown was so long
Yeah.
that, you know, a lot of Melbourne comics quit. Probably a lot of comics everywhere quit. But, like, a lot of Melbourne comics quit because we were off stage for so long that I think a lot of people just sort of had the distance from it to realize maybe they weren't enjoying what their comedy journey was. For me and a good few friends of mine, it was a real, like, creative boon where we got the distance to realize maybe that we were focused on the wrong things or focused in areas we didn't want to be focused on. And I was on this thing of like, great, I've got to do all the festivals every year because it's where I make all my money and it helps me pay rent, and so it helps me do comedy. And so I was turning over a new hour every year, which is sort of the Australian and UK system, but I prefer the American system where they really work hard to make this airtight, fucking punchy as fuck hour.
Yeah.
And it can still be about stuff, but like it's punchy as fuck. And like I love that. And I don't think it's reasonable to turn that over in a year unless you're an American headliner who's doing an hour every night.
Yeah.
Because then you can run it. But even in the mid-tier Americans who are doing like feature spots or 15 or 20s or whatever, they can't turn over a new hour of gold every year.
Yeah.
You can get some silver and tin maybe, but you can't get gold.
Yeah.
And the Australian system's much worse where there's way less stage time.
Yeah.
Even in Melbourne has got the most gigs of any city, which is why we moved there. But it's still fucking fuck all compared to like New York or London or even like Austin and some other, and like Chicago and stuff like that, right? It's fuck all compared to those places. And so it is that thing of, yeah, like I was turning over an hour, but I wouldn't say it was an hour I was proud of.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an hour that was the best I could do in the time I had allotted to sell tickets, to make money. And I was definitely growing, but yeah, I'm now gearing up to do my first special, which I've just
that's exciting.
which I've just decided. Well, I've been gearing up to do it for fucking since pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And then I keep getting better. This sounds like a stupid complaint. I keep getting better, and I go, well, it's a good thing I didn't record it already because I got way better since I was planning to, and then I sort of was waiting to stop growing rapidly where I start to like peter off and I go, okay, cool, now I'll record it, which is maybe silly. And, you know, obviously I'm keep getting older and less relevant to to the industry. And so it's this thing of I have to get it done now. So I just turned 40. I want to get it done before I turn 41.
Yeah.
And I was just in Adelaide with Sam Talent on the tour, and they have this beautiful, beautiful downstairs space that was just so lovely because I was going to get it done with Stupid Old Studios in Melbourne because they did a taco special, like Aidan Jones. Looks beautiful, sounds beautiful. I think a lot of Australian specials don't have the mix right sound-wise, and it doesn't sound good or it doesn't look great or it's shot weird in a way I don't like. And I was like, oh, they do a great job. I'll get it done there. But I didn't want to get it done in Melbourne because I live there. Everyone's seen my gear.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I think the audiences there are great, but it's like, oh, I've literally come up with all the bits there or refined them all there. And they know, like, the people who would come to see me have seen all of it
Yep.
because I'm doing now a best of the 7 hours I did. And also this best of hour, it's finally an hour worth doing.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, 6 minutes from this and 12 minutes from this and 4 minutes from this. And it's just the absolute best stuff from each of those shows. And I'm really proud of this hour. And I'm also, in the last couple of years, particularly, I got into therapy and got on medication. I stopped drinking, and they all made me way better at comedy. And so I'm a much better performer, and then all the material's much better. So I'm going to do it at the downstairs the Rhino Room in Adelaide.
Oh, awesome.
Which is a beautiful space.
Yeah.
And I barely ever go to Adelaide, so the audience there is fresh.
Yeah.
Because I just opened for Sam there, and I don't say I'm so great or whatever, but I fucking destroyed it.
I killed it.
Oh, it was so good. It was a thing. Sam the day after was like, because I've been like on the run of the tour, but I've also been like tour managing, so I've been stressed out all the time, and like I feel like I haven't been executing that well as I could do on stage, or to the level I can get to on stage. I've been like less than that.
Yeah.
And after the Adelaide show, like the day after, like we were at the airport, and he went, "So do you reckon the Adelaide show was like the best one you've done?" And I went, "Oh, I mean of the tour." He went, "Yeah, I don't mean the best in your whole life." and I went, "Yeah, absolutely." He went, "Yeah, I think that's definitely true." And it is that thing of at that show for various reasons. Like I got my head in the game, and then also like the crowd was great, the space was great. And it's also pretty small, which I like. Like I think you shouldn't go too large for a special. Not that I can fill a massive room of my own anyway, but it's like it's small enough, and I think all the things are there. And I spoke to James McCann, who has like a production company he works with over there, and his stuff looks good. Yeah. And so I think I'm going to do it there, and I want to do it before I turn 41, before I get married, because a lot of my stuff is about my fiance and stuff. And so that's going to be mid next year as well.
Yeah.
And then I want to, because I'm not going to tell the whole story, but my legal name is Jez White Rice Supreme. Okay. Which is a silly name. There's a story behind it. I won't tell it. But my fiancée Nicole, maybe she's decided is going to take my last name, so she will become Dr. Supreme. Which I think is pretty cool. And I was on track to be, and I never got to be. So I would like to film the special, then get married, and then have like as a tag to the special some clips like from the wedding, and then the paperwork or whatever with her name, like Dr. Nicole Supreme. As like the final thing in the special, and I think it'll be really cool, and it makes me even tear up a little bit thinking about it, because I'm a loser romantic. I cried 4 times at Barbie.
Oh yeah, nice. I think I cried maybe once.
Yeah, I cry a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really want to do all that next year, and we'll see how it all goes timeline wise.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool. So whereabouts in the planning process are you for, like, is it, like all the material?
Well, it keeps changing. I mean, it keeps evolving, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I guess there's never going to be like, this is it. And
I think literally up to the day of the record, there will still be things changing. I certainly know the vast majority of what's going to be in, but what's been happening, I guess, for the last, since pre-COVID, because I did a best of hour a couple months before COVID. And at that was the first time I went, all right, this is going to be the special, and then I ran it all, and then I went, this is not ready. And then COVID hit, and then since then I've sort of been working on the best of, right, which is still essentially that, but took out some stuff that I think didn't work as well, or maybe didn't fit me anymore, and then replaced it with new stuff that was better. And so that's continued to happen since COVID. Is that I've continued to run this hour sort of at a festival here or a festival there, but not necessarily the whole run. And then I go, okay, what's the hour look like now? Is it ready yet? And so I'm going to do it at Good Chat here in Brisbane in September. Yeah. And it's going to definitely have bits in it that weren't in the last time I ran the best of, which I think was at Newcastle Comedy Club, like late last year maybe. But then as I add new things, I have to take old stuff out because I was already over time for a special. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good thing though. It's like it keeps getting stronger. And what I really like, I'm glad this is happening, but it's also can be frustrating on a logistical level, is that every time I write a new bit that stays in my act or whatever, it's way better than all the old stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm
that,
like,
finds a new spot in
so
the
I'm like, well,
special
that
maybe.
has to be in.
Yeah.
Which means something has to come out. But like, I love callbacks. I love for an hour. That's one of the things I really love about hours is like having it all be interrelated and
like a through line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like doing a big arc necessarily, but it is definitely a thing of, you know, the hour. I really like structure, and I like structuring the hour in certain ways, and it's why I like doing hours. Is that you can say stuff 30 minutes in that you couldn't say 10 minutes in or 5 minutes in. Not necessarily just because it's like offensive or whatever, but also because, they know this about me, and this about me. That makes this funnier.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a callback to a line, because all my stuff is like autobiographical. It's like the fact that they know this happened in the army, and then this happened here, and this happened there as a neuroscientist, and then this happened with this girl. Then that this other thing is way funnier.
Yeah.
And so, a big part of it, the big kind of part of the fun of doing hours is that. But then also in terms of like releasing your first special, I think there's a lot of stress that goes on. You want it to be perfect, and so it's not going to be perfect, but I want it to be as good as it can be. And like I started doing this. It's very strange, but I started doing this multimedia comedy musical. That's a choose your own adventure. That's completely clean. And I started doing that like a few years ago, and I've been working on that like on the side of my stand up. Doing it at festivals and stuff. And so now I'm watching like Sam Campbell and stuff, who I don't know if you're a fan of, but he's so funny.
Yeah.
He does like a lot of like multimedia stuff in his shows, and it's like there's a real power to incorporating these different elements other than just being a guy on a microphone. But also I don't want to be a gimmick comedian. So there's a thing of like I want to work out how much of that stuff to include as well. Yeah.
This musical thing that you're doing as well, does that fall under like the Jez Watts, like as like?
Oh, I mean, it's me.
It's you?
It's a comedy. It was something I think I started working on it just pre-COVID, but then I like really worked on it in lockdown because it's just like it's a big project. But it's something it's very different from my stand-up, but it's still me like host. Like I have like a bunch of instruments and stuff, and then there's a bunch of like multimedia and stuff, and then it's like there's videos and stuff that I've made, there's animation I've made, and there's an interactive element where like based on the audience decisions, like the story of it's like a narrative show, and the narrative branches in different directions, and so different characters come in, the story goes in different directions, and it's something you can bring like children to, which is not true of my stand-up at all. But it's been really interesting. But it's me. It's still me performing, and it's me singing, and it's all original songs and stuff that I wrote. It's like none of them are like parody songs, which suck. Unless you're Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
If you're Weird Al, all right, I'm her friend. But for everyone else, Weird Al exists. Let him do it. I think. But that's been really, really fun. And what I'll probably do, because I was working on this during COVID, I got like a grant to finish it, and then like it was a much bigger job than I could possibly finish, and the grant, like it was like the Yarra like city council or whatever, they called me to check up on it, right? Hey, how's it all going? And I was like, it's not done. I'm horribly depressed in lockdown, and that's a lot of the reason it's not done. And they went, we've been getting that from a lot of the grant recipients. We're just going to sign off on it and say that you did complete it, because we don't want to put any more pressure on you while you're trapped in your apartment. And I was like, thank you so much. But what I am going to do ultimately, I think, for that show, because it is a choose your own adventure thing, is that while I do it as a live performance, I want to release it as a YouTube choose your own adventure. Similar to like Bandersnatch and stuff on Netflix. Where it's all like, I started working on that in lockdown, where it's all hyperlinks and stuff.
It moves you like to a different video.
Exactly. And then based on that you go like this. So that's gonna be a really big project. It's gonna be, I'm hoping, released the year after the stand-up special. Because what I really like is what Daniel Kitson does, who's like a UK actor, I don't know if you know him. But because he'll do like a stand-up show one year, and then the next year he'll come back with a storyteller show that's not stand-up. Which is, when I say storyteller, it's not stories from his life. It's like stories that he's created. It's like a narrative that he's telling. And then the year after he'll come back with a stand-up show. And I really like that. That gives him 2 years to work on each creative thing, because he's sort of working on them both at the same time. And it's like the 1 year turnover for a stand-up hour is not right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, loads of people here do it, but it's
Yeah.
like they're not strong enough. Even if you're great at comedy, they're not strong enough. And they
Yeah.
could be stronger if you took two. And so I like the idea of that. So it's like Bun Runner, which is the comedy musical. It's about a bunch of anthropomorphic bunny rabbits who were in the MK Ultra experiments. Never mind. But Bun Runner is something I'm going to tour probably for years and years.
Yep.
Because it's a show that's continued evolving. And also it's choose your own adventure. So it can be different when people see it.
I guess musicals as well. Like it's like they
It's
can have
fun.
Yeah, and they can have like it's not like we're like we need Les Mis 2 or whatever. We need a different Les Mis every year.
Les Mis 2, the new batch. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Musicals have like that longevity of.
Well, I think and also like the animations, like I mean, so I worked with this artist to make some of the images, and then I've done all like the graphic design and stuff beyond that, and the animation beyond that. But yeah, like the graphics are cute as fuck. Like it's interesting visually. Then the music is, at least the goal is that the music is all good and stands on its own musically. Then it's all the lyrics are funny, and then also I'm performing the show and presenting the show in a way that's quite improvisational.
Yeah.
And so it is that thing of, even if it wasn't Choose Your Own Adventure, you could come back and see it multiple times. But then on top of that, you know, audiences can go, oh, we'll have this thing. So a different character is in the show that wasn't in the show before. And the narrative is different in that whole section. And then everything after that is branching, which turns out to be a lot of fucking work to make that I kind of wish I hadn't decided to do. Because I have to make basically 8 versions of this fucking show and then only perform once. It's stupid. But yeah, so it is something I think I'm going to keep performing, you know, year after year. But I don't know, it's been I love the festival system. I'll probably keep doing it forever. But Edinburgh, I more or less have decided I'm not going to go back to.
Oh, okay.
Well, the accommodation over there is wildly expensive. It always was the biggest expense. And then they changed the laws over there. Basically, that students couldn't get kicked out of accommodation after an 11-month lease. So now it's twice as expensive as it used to be. It already was the single largest expense. Now it's twice as expensive.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I love Edinburgh, but I can't see with the current financial system and the financial position I'm in that I can, you know, go there and lose. I can't lose a bunch of money again. I did that 1 year. And yes, I've paid it back.
Yeah.
But I've had it explained to me in no uncertain terms.
Yeah.
I cannot start doing that again. And it's like, that's very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start going to the States for like a month a year.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I'll do that
so
instead.
States,
I mean, to be honest, like all my favorite comedians are from the States anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think I'll gain more creatively from doing that and probably lose less money than to go to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Do you have any advice for new, like, up-and-coming comics?
I think the best advice you can get is to never listen to advice. Because I think mostly, at least in a technical sense, like, people can only tell you how to be a worse version of themselves. And I think everyone needs to find their own path. And I think it can be a real sort of creative cul-de-sac to go down to like try to emulate someone directly. But I think to not take things personally is great advice in comedy. Just general career sense stuff. Because usually the reason you're not on a gig is not because someone's personally said, not that person. Usually the reason you haven't gotten something or you're not on a gig is because someone went, oh, we have to get that person. And they only had one slot. And so not taking things personally and getting upset about things and just trying to work as hard as you can, I think that's the best advice, I think, for sure, that I've heard. And yeah, never listen to someone who tells you how to do specific comedy, like your comedy differently.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right? Don't take advice from someone who goes, oh, you know what you should do is this.
Yeah.
But when someone says this thing that you're doing is wrong, you should listen to it and at least consider it.
Yeah.
But don't listen to them if they tell you how to fix it.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So what's next for you? I mean, you've already we've covered like the special and
so
stuff.
working towards the special and trying to I've done Bun Runner for like 3 or 4 years now at like one festival I think a year, but it's still not finished. It's like I don't know if it ever will be. I'd like to finish it, but yeah. So I'm just like winding up with the Sam Talent tour now, So I'm flying back to Melbourne in a couple of days. So I'm going to finish Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
Which I started while I was in Melbourne in the middle of the tour, which I shouldn't have done. It's fucking good. I'm going to finish Baldur's Gate 3, and then I've got Sydney Fringe, where I'm doing Bun Runner there, and then I'm doing my hour in a Good Chat in September, and then I'm gearing up for Perth Fringe right now, where I'm like running 3 venues. I'm going to be doing multiple shows for myself. Then I'm also producing my friend He Huang shows. So that's going to be a very busy 6 weeks, but I'll make a big bunch of money, which is useful. I need it. And then hopefully get married, do the special, be a world famous comedian. I won't be famous ever, but I just want to have enough of an audience that I can continue to do comedy and pay rent, and that'll all be good.
Yeah, cool. So it's on, I guess, on the world famous comedian thing. Where can people find you?
JezWatts.com, JezWatts, or Jez Watts Comedy at all the social media things. I'm even on Threads, which no one really moved to.
Yeah, I
set up an account.
I set it up.
Nobody's looking at shit on there.
Yeah, I like went.
And Twitter sucks now.
Yeah.
I'm still there. I still post my jokes there, but it sucks. I guess Instagram is the thing now.
Yeah,
it's the only one.
Funny with Threads, it was like the first day of it was just everyone just going insane, just saying whatever, and I literally haven't checked that app since. So
no, I mean I feel like I don't have room for another app.
Yeah,
but I've been recording everything the last like 2 months. I really need to edit things and put them up on TikTok and shit. It's the new meta.
Yeah, pretty.
I hate it.
Keeping up with whatever's
so much editing. Oh.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, sweet. Cheers.